Hi students, this is Mr. Bickford, and today we are going to be starting Chapter 5, brand new chapter. Chapter 5, the title of Chapter 5 is this. Chapter 5 is Integers and the Coordinate Plane. Most of you have worked with coordinate planes, but for a lot of kids, integers is a new word, and that is one of the things we're going to learn today. Chapter 5, Lesson 1. The title is Integers and Graphing. So on your Cornell note page, write this at the top. Also, make sure you're writing your name on your Cornell notes. I've noticed quite a few copies of notes with no name on them, and if it gets left, it's not going to get back to you, chances are, without your name. So today, we're going to start with, what is an integer? So over here, that's what we're going to start with, what we're going to talk about. What is an integer? Doesn't look like a G. So, integer. To tell you or to explain what an integer is, what I want you to do is write a T-chart. And on this side, I want you to write integers. And on this other side, I want you to write non-integers. And what I'm going to do is ask a virtual class to give me a number, and I will tell you, I will write it down, either it's an example of an integer or it's an example of a non-integer. So let's get started. So when I call on you, just give me a number, and I'm going to put it on either the integer side or the non-integer side. So Erilyn, give me a number. Number 9. I'm going to write that over here. 9 is an example of an integer. Chris, give me a number. 125. That is an example of an integer. Emma, give me a number. -8. -8 is an example of an integer. Good guess. Let's see. Connor, give me a number. 3,422. Still an integer. Samantha, give me a number. -52 is an integer. So I want you to think about what's up here and what number could you try next that might be an example of a non-integer. Zach, what do you think? 0. The number 0 is still an integer. Abigail, give me an example, give me a number. 1/2. 1/2 is not an integer. So now, after one kid gets a non-integer, usually a lot more examples come quickly. Matthew, give me another number. 4 3/4 is not an integer. Brea, give me a number. 0.4. 0.4, a decimal. 0.4 is not an integer. Ryan, give me a number, please. a negative 2 1/3. Negative 2 1/3, not an integer. Emily, give me another number, please. Negative 6.2 is not an integer. So now I think we've got a good list, and I think you can probably tell what, from our survey, what is an integer and what are non-integers. Integers are whole numbers, positive and negative, whole numbers, and zero. So on a graph, let's write this down. Integers are positive and negative, whole numbers, and zero. Positive and negative, whole numbers, and zero. Non-integers are all those things in between, with a fraction like a half, 4 3/4, or negative 2 1/3, or it's got a decimal on the end, negative 6.2, 0.4. It's not whole. If it's not a whole number, positive or negative, and zero, it's not an integer. So now let's look what those would look like on a graph or a number line. You're most used to number lines that go across, okay, and here's 0. I'm going to put an arrow on that number line to show that it keeps going forever in that direction. Now imagine right here at 0, if I could fold this number line across. Ooh, drop my pen. If I fold this across, it's going to count in the exact same way if I were to fold it, but in the negative direction. So this is negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. Again, notice that if you could fold across 0, the 1 is going to land on negative 1, the 2 is going to land on negative 2, 3 is going to land on negative 3, and so on. Graphing integers. If I asked you to graph the integer number 1, you would put a point on 1. So I'm going to put a point just like that, a dot. If I asked you to graph 2, you'd put a point on 2. If I asked you to graph negative 3, you would put a point on negative 3. So I'm going to graph all the integers on this number line. So 3, 4, 0, negative 1, negative 2, and negative 4. So if you are graphing something on a number line, it needs a point with what you're trying to graph. Okay, the other thing is that number lines can go up and down. So I'm going to make another number line over here. And that's going to be 0. The positive integers count up. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and again, arrow showing that the numbers keep going forever. And negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, and negative 4, and arrow. So you can have number lines that go horizontal. Number lines can also go up and down. Now, If I'm looking at a vertical number line, if I fold, it still is true as if I fold a horizontal. If I fold this down, the 1 would land on -1, the 2 would land on -2, and so on. So, horizontal, vertical number lines, you can use both. All right, so now let's do some highlighting. And for integer, I'm going to highlight it with 3 different colors, and I'll show you why. Part of it's going to be pink. Part of it's going to be orange. And part of it's going to be yellow. Colors don't really matter as long as you match them up. So now, why did I use those different colors? I'm going to say that the yellow are positive, the positive integers, and that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, those are the positive integers. 0, we're going to make orange. So 0. And again, I could highlight the vertical number line the same. Negative, I'm going to make pink. So -1, -2, -3, -4. So now we've got a color coordinated example of integers. Positive and negative whole numbers and 0. It's nothing in between. I'm not highlighting anything in between. A half, 1 7/8, 2.7, -3.5, -0.9. Anything that's in between, not a whole, non-integer. All right. So, moving on. The next thing I want to talk about is the meaning. We use integers in lots of real-life situations. So that's the next thing I wanted to talk about, is a situation, a real-life situation, an integer that would represent that situation, and the meaning of 0 in that situation. So what I want you to do next is we're going to make, let's see, how should we do this? We're going to make a table. We're going to have a situation, a real-life situation, an integer, and meaning of 0. Okay, so now let's talk about some real-life situations that we'd use integers for. You might use integers if you're playing a game and you have to move back 3 spaces. So I'm going to write that here. Move back 3 spaces. So if you think about this, the opposite of moving back 3 spaces would be moving forward 3 spaces. If you're moving back, we would use a negative integer to represent that situation. So because of this keyword back, I would use the integer to move back 3 spaces. I would use a -3. That's moving back 3 spaces. In this situation, playing a game, what would be the meaning of 0? So the meaning of 0 depends on your situation, whatever your context is. In this situation, playing a game, and you got a 0, you could say you don't move forward and you don't move backwards. Or you could say you don't move. You don't move forward and you don't move backwards. Here's another real life situation where we use integers. Money, really common real life situation for integers. If you gain $10, if you gain $10, and let's separate these with lines here, different situations. If you gain $10, what integer do you think that would represent? Would represent gain of $10? The answer is positive 10. Now, for positives, you can write the positive symbol, or I could just have written a 10. With no symbol, it's a positive. So I could write positive 10 just like that, or I could just write 10. If you don't see anything there, it's a positive number. So if you gain $10, you are positive 10. What would the meaning of 0 be if you gain in this situation with money? If you have 0, that means you didn't gain any money, you didn't lose, you don't have any money, and you don't owe any money. So you don't have money, or owe any money. And I'll use a dollar sign to abbreviate money. So a gain of $10 would be a positive 10. The meaning of 0 in this situation, talking about money, would be you don't have any money and you don't owe any money. Okay? So there are lots and lots and lots of real life examples. Well, let's do one more. And I'll talk about some others. Another real common use of integers is talking about sea level. So we might say you dive to the bottom, or you dive down into the ocean, and you dive down 10 feet to pick something up. Okay, so dive down 10 feet, dive down 10 feet into the ocean. So, ideas for the integer. If you dive down 10 feet to pick something up, the word down is a key word. Down would mean negative, so I would write a negative 10. What's the meaning of 0 in this situation? If you're talking about being in the ocean, well, if you're at 0, you're right at the very top of the water. You're not above the water and you're not below the water. You're right at the surface. And that has a special meaning. The meaning of 0 in that would be called sea level, which you've probably heard that word before. Sea level. So, as you can see, depending on the situation, a game, money, sea level, the meaning of 0 changes. Here it meant you don't move. Here it meant you don't have any money, you don't owe any money. In this situation, diving down 10 feet, I should put in the ocean. 0 means sea level. So there's lots and lots of context that you're going to discover in this chapter for integers. Games, money is another real common. Temperature, which now that it's real cold, you've probably heard about negative temperatures in some parts of the country. And let's talk about that one for a second. So if you're talking about temperature and it's negative 25, or it's 25 below 0, that would be a negative 25 would be the integer. But what's the meaning of 0 in temperature? Well, there is no special meaning of 0 if you're talking about temperature. Water freezes at 32 degrees. So the meaning of 0 in temperature, you could say that it's 32 degrees below 0, or you could just say that it's 0 degrees. You could also say that you could describe it as it's cold. So you really have to think about what the situation is and what is the meaning of 0. Okay, the last thing I want to do are write down some key words. Keywords for integers, and there are many more than the ones that we're going to write down, but this is a good list to get started. These are words that usually indicate negative situations. These on this side, these are words that indicate a positive situation. I'm going to go back to my same colors. Pink is negative. And I'm going to go back and look at some of these too. Back was a -3. Dive down was a negative situation. Positive. A gain of $10. That's a positive situation. Okay, so here are some other keywords that could mean a negative situation. Let me tip this so we get a little more space here. So these words would be a negative. You would use a negative integer to describe this. Below, like below sea level. A loss. If you lose money, that's going to be a negative situation. Lose. Subtract. Take out. We often use take out money as an example. Take out money out of your account. Another word for take out that you may not know is withdraw. If you withdraw money from your account, you're taking it out. That's gonna be a negative. If you owe money, that's going to be a negative situation, a negative integer. If you are in debt, D-E-B-T is that word. If you're in debt, that's a negative situation. Down, below, or no, we have below. Back, like this one. Move back 3 spaces. Deduct. Decrease. Another one that you hear with money sometimes is you're in the red. If you hear that, or red ink, kind of, those are accounting terms. If you're in the red, that's a negative situation. There are more, and we may come back and add to this as we discover more. But these words are going to indicate a negative situation. You would use a negative integer to represent what's going on. Positive words. Above. A gain. Add. Put in. If you put in money into your account, that's going to be a positive situation. Deposit. If you make a deposit to your bank account, that's going to be a positive. Up. If you think about elevation, if you move up, that's going to be a positive situation. Forward. What else? Increase. Earn. And the accounting equivalent to, if you're in the red, that's negative. If you are in the black, okay, again, these are accounting terms with money. But if you're in the red, that's negative. If you're in the black, that's positive. There are, again, This is a good starting list, but you're going to see other words, and you can come back and add other negative and positive keywords as we go through this chapter. Okay, I meant to say this earlier, but hidden treasure. So I'm going to be putting in some puzzles for hidden treasure this chapter, and here are the rules. Okay, hidden treasure rules. In order to win the prize for hidden treasure, first you have to solve the puzzle, but then you must have all your chapter notes. If you don't have all your chapter notes and your name gets picked, you are not going to win the prize even if you've solved the puzzle. You must also have completed the assignment for the lesson of where the hidden treasure came. So for example, in a minute I'm going to give you the puzzle for lesson 1. Tomorrow I'll draw a name. If you solve the puzzle, you could win, and you will win if you've got lesson 1 notes, this page right here, and you've also got the assigned pages, whatever that is. Usually it's going to be in your workbook, but whatever the assignment is, if those are done and you've solved the puzzle and you've got the notes, you are going to win. Here is Chapter 5, Lesson 1 puzzle. Okay, solve that puzzle. What does that represent? Remember these puzzles, we did these before winter break, and the puzzles represent a common phrase. If it's not something that makes sense that you've heard of, you probably don't have it solved. I'm trying to pick puzzles where most of you it's a phrase that you've heard of. Okay, we are at 27 minutes. This has been one of our longest videos, but your assignment today goes pretty fast, so I think you should be able to get most of it done in class. Here are the notes. Good luck on the treasure, and I'll see you soon for lesson 2.